Where did this computer? There it goes. Let's ride. Um, okay. So Tara Dower, we chatted like right before you started the effort. My claim to fame, my biggest claim to fame in the ultra running world is that I interviewed Tara Dower way before it was cool to interview Tara Dower. Uh,
Yeah, you were like I was thinking about that today. I was like, that was like right before too, like a week, maybe at least a week.
yeah, I think the episode came out on August 8th, and we probably talked a few days before that. But yeah, it was pretty quick. A pretty quick turnaround. Also interviewed you and Liz back in the Colorado Trail days, which we'll talk about a
Yeah.
little bit. But so first off, what I like to just like talk about with everyone. So it's October 13th now. You've been done for a couple, 2, 3 weeks. Um, how are you feeling?
3 weeks. Yeah, I feel pretty good these days. The only thing is I was talking to you before, but like for the listeners, I was sore. I'm sore today because I did my first like workout slash like little run yesterday, and I'm like incredibly sore. And I was like realizing like you can lose it so quickly. Like I literally lost, I feel like I lost everything in the last 3 weeks because I am incredibly sore. But like I had a glute injury on the last day and it's okay now. It's last day of the FKT. It's okay now. Brain fog has lifted. I can't use that as an excuse anymore for being slow and delayed. So it's just like typical Terra delayedness. But yeah, there was some pretty epic brain fog there for, a couple weeks, at least the first 2 weeks. But I'm okay now. I'm in Colorado and recovering here is just really nice.
Yeah, I was pretty astounded when, you finished the trail and then it seemed like the next day or like 2 days later, Finn had an episode out of single track and I was like, how is she conscious and talking right now?
Well, it was fun. Finn's like a good friend. But he like I had so many messages and DMs and stuff,
hmm
and I guess he's trying to like reach out to me. So he ended up reaching out to my pacer JP because he was still with us at my grandparents' mountain house recovering. And he was like, "Hey, I just want to throw this out here. Finn keeps like messaging me and seeing like if you want to get on the podcast." And yeah, so he's such a good friend. I was like, yeah, I'll do it, but it's not going to be pretty. And it ended up being actually a really good podcast. So I'm happy with how that went.
Yeah, I was gonna say you sounded surprisingly coherent to me, which is pretty incredible, all things considered.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've always been very curious about, right? I've not dipped my toes. I'm in the multi-day scene pretty firmly, but I'm not in the multi-week scene. And you've dipped your toes into both, right? You've done the Mountain to Sea Trail, you've done the AT now, but you've also done the Colorado Trail, Benton MacKaye Trail, which are like comparatively shorter. I I've always wondered about it's it seems to me with like week long efforts or less than a week long that you're sort of degrading the entire time. Whereas one thing that's always fascinated me about multi-week efforts is how you guys seem to be able to find this line of sustainability. And you do obviously, I'm sure you push really hard and degrade at the end, but you have to find some sort of sustainability. So I'm wondering like what do you think are the differences between multi-day and multi-week, and how do you approach it differently from like a day-to-day sort of logistics perspective?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think after doing the AT, I think I prefer doing multi-week attempts
Interesting.
over multi-day. Uh, just because your body gets used to it's this weird phenomenon. Your body gets used to that day-to-day activity and you're no longer like super sore. Like, yeah, you're sore and you're tired. Yeah, there's that underlying factor. But um you kind of get used to it and your body starts to be able to do it a lot better than if it was like multi-day. I know like after the Bet McKay Trail and after the Colorado Trail, I was really wrecked, like so tired. My feet hurt. Like I am so wrecked. And obviously after the like first week on the AT, it's the same thing. But then after week two, your body just kind of adapts, which is this crazy. It's crazy to say that. I know like that's a sentiment shared by Anish too. I read her book during the FKT and or listened to her book during the FKT, and she says the same thing, which it's crazy. So yeah, I almost prefer these multi-week attempts over the multi-day because you just feel so much better.
So interesting.
Definitely like, I know, yeah, it's so strange. Because you think like you would be so wrecked, but I mean you kind of get used to it.
Mhm.
And obviously after I finished the AT, I was sleeping for like, I mean, I'm still so tired and I'm recovering from it, but the recovery I feel like is a lot easier than the recovery during like multi-day. And also, I just want to say congratulations on the long trail. That was
Thank
insane.
you.
And me and Rascal were just like following it the entire time. She'd give me updates and Scott would give me updates as well. So just incredible, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I know like I was really sad that I couldn't get out with you actually on trail, but it just the way our schedules worked out.
Oh,
There was like a brief period of time where it looked like there was like a small possibility that we'd overlap on the long trail, and I was like praying for that, but it didn't end up even coming close.
that would be so wild if we just ran together during our attempts.
Yeah. Um, but no, that so okay, so that's really interesting because I've always had like in through hiker parlance, right? You've got the you people develop trail legs, and we've like all about that. Where it's this for people who don't know, it's like sort of this point in a through hike where you sort of get more and more sore, and then at some point your legs just get used to it, and you feel a lot better despite going farther and farther. It sounds like that still happens to some extent on these multi-week efforts, and so you feel like sort of in the 1 to 2 week range is where you started to feel like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember thinking to myself, like, going through Maine, Southern Maine, New Hampshire, which is just so difficult, just thinking like get to 2 weeks, get to Hanover, but then
Hmm.
get to 2 weeks because that is when those trail legs adapt and the hiker hunger takes over as well. Some
Sure.
a lot more. So I was just waiting for those 2 weeks.
And so two things from that. One, like you mentioned, the hiker hunger. I don't think people understand this maybe who haven't done one of these things before. Can you explain just like, I mean, I've experienced it, but it's like really hard to eat the requisite calories for a while and then you start getting really hungry. But just talk about sort of what it was like to try to get food down in the first couple of weeks.
Honestly, it was a lot easier than other attempts. It was, I was able to eat really well. I remember the first week, there's a couple days in there that I had a lot of issues eating. Um, and it's just, normally how my body with Mounds of Sea Trail, which was a month long, that was really difficult. So just for instance, looking at that way, it's like your body's almost like rejecting this amount of calories that you're trying to
Hmm.
force down because you need all of these calories to push those big miles and go up big mountains. And so your body, like, it's having trouble eating that amount of calories and processing that amount of calories when you are in that first 2 weeks. But then it's this wild thing that happens that your body, I experienced this on the AT when I was through hiking, but your body just like accepts those calories and then you just start eating all this food. You're just like you're a vacuum. And I will say on the Mountains of Sea Trail, I felt like I never adapted to be able to eat that amount of calories. So it's
Mm.
always been different. So it's kind of expecting the AT this time around on the FKT for my body to be rejecting it a lot more, but it actually like was super accepting of all these foods I was throwing at it. Obviously, in the like I said, the first 2 weeks it was not as like adapted, but then after those 2 weeks, I was just like I was able to house all this food, whatever I got.
And so what did an average day of food look like? Do you know relatively, I mean, I'm sure you know how many calories you were taking down, but also like um, sort of carb versus fat versus protein. What were sort of the macros that you were trying to put down from a day-to-day perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I wish Rascal was on the pod right now because she She was the one doing a lot of that. My mom was doing a lot of like research on that. And then we got Amy and Steve who came out day 10 or 11, and she just started like making all my food and being like the food person. She was keeping track of my calories, protein, fats, macros. And then we had Fresh Grounds. I don't know if you know Fresh Grounds from the AT. He's a trail angel, but he started making me all this food. He came out for 2 weeks. And then my friend Flipper came out as well and helped with food. So honestly, like I've mentioned on a lot of podcasts and just, from things I've written on Instagram or on my website, I was just the race car. My only job during this FKT was to eat and to run and try to sleep as much as I could. I was the physical embodiment of this FKT, but it's such a team effort that I couldn't think beyond just like eating and running and
Right.
sleeping. I couldn't think beyond that. So I was lucky to have these people who I put in charge, like Rascal and my mom, and then like Amy coming out to, do all that math with food and making the food. I was so lucky to have them come out and help with that. If I'm to give a really rough answer, I don't know macros. I don't know anything about that. Protein and fat. I know Amy started making me wraps that were just really dense in like protein and fats and just a lot of meats, a lot of like, she gave me a lot of cream or not cream cheese. What is it called? Oh man. Uh, Cottage cheese,
Okay.
like cottage cheese things. Like I never eat cottage cheese like that, but it gave me so much energy. I did do something I really wanted to do, was drink protein shakes at every single cruise stop. So I had an
Sure.
average 6 cruise stops every day, and at night I drank a protein shake. So around 7 times a day, I was drinking a 360 um, calorie protein drink with I don't remember the amount of protein, but it's by First Endurance. And that's what I have a mentor, Carl Meltzer, and that's what he did. And he
Yep.
didn't lose any weight on the Appalachian Trail when he completed the FKT. So I knew I wanted to do that. That was one thing that I, contributed to, that nutrition. And then also general calories looked like 500-calorie breakfast, 300 calories an hour during the day, and then 1,500 calories for dinner.
Wow. It's a lot of calories.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know if we always hit that, but like I never felt hungry and I always felt like I was energized. So
yeah.
whatever, it worked.
Interesting. And so interesting. So going back to sustainability a little bit, um another thing about these multi-week efforts is like, for example, on my unsupported long trail, like I got rain the last day and I was just like clomping through mud the whole time, but I was sort of just like an effort like that is short enough that you can just sort of power through and let your feet disintegrate on you and you'll be fine because you're going to be done. On the AT, you can't do that, obviously, right? It's too long. You need to keep your body in relatively decent shape so you don't just completely flame out. What were your strategies for like the long, or I guess sort of the day to day, what did your self-care routine look like? And then on sort of extraordinary days where you had a lot of rain, a lot of mud, like what did you do to keep yourself from, it's just so easy to fall apart on those days when you're pushing big miles.
Yeah. General plan, I honestly adopted this from Carl Sabe. I've said this so many times, but I'm such a big student of his. Like I listened to everything he put out and adopted a lot of his techniques. And so something I wanted to keep track of is like my foot care because my feet always disintegrate
Hmm.
on these things. Always, always. They did. They did it on the, but if I didn't take care of them as well as I did, I wonder like how bad it could have gotten and how much
Sure.
slower I would have been. But what that looked like was changing my socks and shoes. Um, in the beginning in Maine and New Hampshire, it was pretty much every stop because I did get a lot of rain and my feet were pretty wet for a lot of those miles.
Hmm.
So changed my shoes and socks pretty much every stop. But then we got to the point where it was maybe halfway through where I only did it once because it was eating up so much time and my feet weren't getting wet besides just sweat.
Sure.
Um, so I'd also, in those like first two-ish weeks, I also like dried off my feet. When I took off my socks and shoes, I dried off my feet, kind of cleaned them a little bit. And I did have people helping with me with this too. I had Christine and Rascal and JP and my mom helping me like change my shoes and socks more efficiently. So yeah, they would dry off my feet, wash them, and then I'd powder them and throw on like new socks and new shoes. If it was nighttime, that was a really important time in the van to like take care of the feet. So that again looked like, stripping socks and washing the feet really, really well, making sure you're getting all that dirt, all that gunk off, and then powdering that. Well, actually, then we did a Epsom salt bath just to relax them a little bit. And then powdered them, sometimes put cream on them if didn't need to be dried out. Um, but I think the most important thing you can do for your feet during these like multi-week records is dry them out at the end of the day.
Hmm.
I made a mistake one night putting socks on and that just kind of kept all the moisture in. And you just need to dry them out completely because your feet, I don't know why, they just need to be dried out. It just feels better.
Yeah.
But I did get a lot of blisters. I got a lot of blisters. I got two blisters on both feet at the bottoms of my feet, and they actually turned into these large caverns in my
Ooh.
feet. Yeah, it's funny. I talked to Anish after my FKT, and she's like, "Yeah, I also got these large holes in my feet. Your blisters, you get these blisters, and then they just like some of them just like start digging deeper into your foot, like it pops, and then somehow it just like it's like this cavern in your foot." She's like, "Oh yeah, I've had that too." I'm like, "Oh, thank God, it's not just me with these large caverns." So
Have they
we
healed?
yeah, sort of. Like much they're much better, but
Okay.
there's still like this weird scab thing that's filling in. But there was times we would like be cleaning the feet at the end of the day. My pacers or like whoever was cleaning my feet would look at them and be like, "We're good. Like it's fine. Like yeah, it's a hole in your foot, but as long as there's not like anything coming out of it or like oozing out of it or look concerning, like red lines coming out of it and it's infected, like as long as it's not that, we're okay." So a lot of times you just turn a blind eye to these like weird looking things on my feet. Like my pinky toes still don't look like pinky toes. I don't even know how to explain them. They just look like these dark lumps. Like I have four toes, and then there's these dark, weird, scabby lumps at
Oh
the
my
end
God.
of my toes. So they don't look normal at the moment. But yeah, I wonder if I didn't take care of my feet as well as I did out there, what would have happened? Because I
Sure.
mean, they're bad now, but what else could have happened?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And did you have a routine for like cleaning the rest of your body, or was it just kind of send it?
Oh yeah, no cleaning of the rest of the body. I took three showers the entire time. Two of them were on trail at Amy and Steve's van. So right off the trail, I just went in there and took a shower.
Hmm.
Um, we had to go into we had to get a hotel one of the nights, which I absolutely hate going into town or like going to hotels during FKT. So this was like I was like, oh man, but we had to because there's a ranger like giving us trouble. He
Oh,
actually
interesting.
told us he was like he was really giving Rascal a lot of trouble, but he told us this hilarious thing. He was completely confident in this, but he was like, you actually can't travel on the Appalachian Trail at night. That's illegal.
Sure, buddy.
But anyways, he was just giving us a lot of issues. So we are like, all right, we're just gonna go to a hotel. Like we're not even gonna worry about it. So I took a shower there. So three showers. But other than that, like as long as I got my feet all taken care of, I was completely happy being kind of stinky, gross.
Wow. That's, I mean, I guess that shower, if you say three showers throughout, like that's I guess one every 10 to 12 days, like that kind of makes sense, I guess. That's like what through hikers usually do. You're just getting, I would imagine, a lot grosser on the average day than the average through hiker, you know?
Yeah, and luckily I was able to change my, clothes and shoes
Sure.
and socks. So I wasn't as stinky as a through hiker would be. I remember being through hiking the Appalachian Trail and just, the stench was so gross. Like once you got into town and like washed up and everything, you only smelt it then.
Right.
Because on the trail you wouldn't smell yourself. You know all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely a lot cleaner because I had clean clothes on the Appalachian Trail. The
No, that
second,
makes sense. And so, and then just like other sort of injury avoidance things, did you have any like stretching or rolling or anything like that? Or was it just get up, get out the door, I'll warm up on the trail?
yeah, I think it was incredibly important to incorporate some sort of recovery after those days. I kind of adopted like, oh, I just need to get to bed as soon as possible from like somebody who else did the AT, FKT. I was like, I don't have any time to do anything extra like stretching. But then my friend Reese was like, I really think you would feel a lot better the next morning if you adopted just 7 minutes of stretching. So I
Mm-hmm.
just did my normal stretching routine that I do outside of FKTs when I'm just training.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And the next days I pretty much felt okay. Like obviously was still pretty sore. In the mornings before I got started, I would do like leg swings and I would like do hip openers, and that took like 2 minutes and then I was off.
Sure. Okay. So like minimal, but good enough to sort of get things loose, get things moving. I feel like that's that's wise in the sense that, like you were saying, that you can get into a mentality of, oh, I just need to like move no matter what, and like anything else is a waste of time. But if you have things in your routine that are going to make you move faster, then that's worth it.
Yeah, that's really something that Carl Sabe, when I'm listening to his podcast, he talks about that. Like taking the time to take care of yourself is going to make you move faster. And, those are really, I mean, it's just really going to help you move faster if you take care of your feet. And if you, I don't know if he's ever talked about stretching, but that's
Mhm.
just like an example of my personal FKT that helped me move quicker.
Totally. Um, Another thing I was interested in was last we talked, right before your effort, you were talking about why you were going southbound, and a big part of it was the sort of the not the underdog mentality, but it was like predator versus prey mentality, and you felt like going southbound, you could be the hunter rather than the hunted. Um, Now that you've gone southbound, do you have any updated feelings about which direction is better? Like what are your general thoughts on how the FK not how the Appalachian Trail should be raced? Or maybe not should be raced, but like what do you think is the best way to do it in terms of direction and why?
Yeah, I haven't done it, quickly northbound, but, and everyone's different, like how they feel like anxiety wise, like that's why I went Sobo. So if somebody didn't have like an amount of anxiety about New Hampshire or Southern Maine, maybe it would be better to go northbound. But personally, I still completely believe that southbound is the way to go. Obviously, there's different schools of thought there, but personally, I'm so glad I went southbound because of just that anxiety of knowing New Hampshire and Southern Maine are coming and getting it over with. The first part was just, it just felt good. I felt accomplished. And I actually just posted my reel of day 11. And I remember that day so vividly. And that's when I got to the New Hampshire Vermont line. And it's just like this weight just melted off of me. And like, finally, I'm done with this like really difficult stuff. Like, obviously, the entire AT is just really difficult.
Sure.
It's no doubt New Hampshire and Southern Maine are just like killers. So I just remember feeling so at peace being on those beautiful, especially Hanover, outside of Hanover, going through Vermont, that first like section. Oh, it's it's so nice and just feeling like so good. Um, yeah, I personally think the record a lot more people, if people go after this FKT, I feel like going southbound is definitely the way to do it. But like I said, everyone's different in their anxieties or in their fitness. Like some people, it takes them a while to get fit on the trail. A lot
Hmm.
of people like to, I think I mentioned this in your podcast last time, but a lot of people, who do these FKTs, they like to work up to their fitness. So they like to go northbound. So they're like getting their trail legs under them. By the time they get to New Hampshire and southern Maine, they're just like blowing through it. Personally, for me, I just wanted to get it over with quickly.
That's so fair. And so that sort of goes back to the, like one of your mantras that you were talking about, which is get to Hanover. And so like for people who don't know what that's referring to is that Hanover is essentially the end of the White Mountains. And it's like it's Hanover's the town that sort of marks the New Hampshire Vermont border, and the approximately 250 miles northbound from Hanover are just like significantly more difficult than like any other part of the Appalachian Trail.
I
Um,
remember walking, like leaving, going down Moosalok and seeing through hikers, northbound through hikers walking up. And I was like, good luck, have fun. You don't know what you're getting yourself into.
that's okay. That's very interesting about sort of
Obviously, like through hiking it compared to like FKTing, it's a very different experience.
sure.
Obviously, and I remember when I was at that point, going through Cube and those mountains when you're just about to get into the whites, like you're just enjoying yourself. It's beautiful out there,
Mhm.
but it's also so freaking hard, man.
Totally. And so, another topic that Finn has posed on his podcast to a lot of people, but I think you're an interesting person to talk about this because you live in both worlds, is that you've had a lot of success in the race scene, and now you've had a lot of success in the FKT scene. The There's this question of what is more compelling, sort of people versus people, or people versus I mean, to me, it's still people versus people. It's you're right. You're racing the ghosts of Carl Sabe, or but you're also like it's you versus nature, and I feel like a lot of Finn's circle or people feel very strongly about races and like people versus people, like on the same start line on the same day. What do you find compelling in the sort of races versus FKTs? What's the experience like being really good at both, and like what do you prefer?
Hmm, that's a great question. Um, Honestly, I think I prefer FKTs because it's a lot of self-motivation. I feel like I self-motivate really well. In races, I get really motivated. I'm very competitive. Obviously I'm a super competitive person. Love meeting people out there, love getting to know, other racers, but at the end of the day, I'm there to, do really well personally and also to hopefully get a really good result, like winning a race or getting a really good time. Um, and I think that's like motivating in its own way, but I think I am more motivated when it's like personal, when I'm out there on my own. Because a lot of FKTs, you don't have somebody that's pushing you along,
Right.
obviously, but it's a lot of personal, what's going to motivate me. And I think I constantly compare myself to other people, which is just, what is that? The death of joy is comparison. So I mean, a lot of these times maybe I'm not having the best, like during the FKT, I remember just thinking like, oh, like all of these incredible athletes like Jen Farr Davis and Carl Sabe, Carl Meltzer, Scott Jurek, they wouldn't be doing this, whatever I was I think, oh, I am not, I am not I compare myself to these people and it's like, I'm so hard on myself sometimes when I'm comparing myself or when I'm just like doing my own thing. And in a way, in a really kind of disgusting way, that motivates me to go faster, be better.
Sure.
And I do that during races, but to a lesser degree. I think it's easier to like be there, be present with people and, not be so hard on yourself, but definitely am am pretty hard on myself when it comes to comparing myself, comparing to these great FKT athletes. Oh, constantly thinking about Christian Morgan and like I said, Scott and all the Carls and Jens. Like, my gosh, like I'm so hard on myself, but there's something for it because it turned out to be a good result.
And so this is another thing I want to talk to you about because like you obviously you had confidence in yourself because when we talked before you went on the effort, like your stated goal from the beginning was the overall record. And so you had to have some amount of confidence going in that you were capable of that. At the same time, it sounds like, right, you revere all these athletes and it's to me it felt like that you went into it with a sort of like underdog mentality of like there are these incredible athletes, like who am I to compete with them, but also I'm going to. And so what was sort of your driving motivator from a day to day in terms of like like I know you're out there to enjoy the trail and all that, but from a competitive aspect, like how did you frame it to sort of push through those hard days and sort of compete against those people who are who you acknowledge are like these incredible legends?
Yeah, honestly, like that is where the crew came in. That's where Rascal came in clutch. Every day was just completing the amount of miles she set before me.
Hmm.
And somehow that was going to turn into an FKT, whatever it was. Like, I wasn't confident that I would get the overall FKT, if I'm going to be honest. It only became a reality like the last couple days. And then I didn't let myself believe it until like 3 miles to the end. Which wasn't a good strategy because when I did finish it, I was not prepared for the reaction that
Hmm.
was involving this. Um, but where was I going with that thought? Um, oh yeah, I thought I would get like maybe Sobo or maybe the women's record, but these records are so hard. I didn't know if that was going to be a possibility. I did have a confidence in my crew and I had confidence in my training and in my body and my knowledge of the Appalachian Trail, but I didn't know if getting the overall FKT was on my mind. Rascal really encouraged me, and I keep saying that if she wasn't there, if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have the FKT.
That's really cool. And so you didn't really like I'm sure you guys had conversations before the effort, but it sounds like on a day to day you weren't really choosing how far you go. You were just getting up and going and stopping when she told you to stop. Does that sound about
Yep.
right?
Yeah, she and the crew, they decided what I would eat. I decided when I'd use the bathroom, but that was pretty much it. They decided how much sleep I would get. Sometimes I had a say in that. Sometimes I had a say in like how many miles I would do, but oftentimes I would beg Rascal for less miles because towards the middle and the end, like she was putting really, really big days on my schedule. So sometimes I'd beg her for less and she would not let up. And everyone had this confidence in me and our crew and our team, but I just was like, I was just following the plan, and yeah, it turned out to be what it was. She knew I put her in that place as the crew chief and my mom as like the crew mom for them to be the only two ones that would be there the entire time for a reason. Because
Mhm.
one, my mom motivates me. She has those game time speeches and she's, always encouraging. She just knows what to say. So you had that factor. And then you had Rascal, who is completely dedicated to whatever we're going to do, whatever I set my mind to. I told her in the beginning I want to go for the overall record, and she internalized that and she didn't let up at all, which I'm thankful for. But I put her and my mom in those places of being like the last line of like decision making for a reason because I knew they were focused on the record, they're competitive, and they know my abilities. I mean, they know it better than I do. They know what I can do better than I do. Oftentimes, Rascal's like, I know you can do it. I just need you to believe you can do it.
Right.
So I put them in those places because of those reasons. And I'm really, for that, like, I have some responsibility for the, FKT. Obviously, I moved the way I did and I set the FKT physically, but when it comes to like the logistics side of it, I am responsible because I put those people in place.
Sure.
But I am completely confident that if it wasn't for Rascal and my mom, I wouldn't have the FKT.
That's so interesting. Like, obviously, you put an insane amount of trust in these people to make decisions and like sort of craft the plan for you. And I think that's sort of an incredible amount of trust that I've never even had on an effort. Like I, for the long trail, my crew was incredible. Like that I got so lucky with how good my crew and pacers were. At the same time, my mindset going into it was like I planned everything down to the minute, and then it was like on the crew to it was on like I put a crew in place that was going to execute like my plan. And I was like I like, I didn't really want to deviate from the plan that I had set. And it just like it's just very cool to me that you had the trust to like let these people make so many of the decisions on such a large scale effort. Like if they didn't know what they were doing or like didn't couldn't make sort of decisions under pressure or the right decisions at the right times, like it could have gone very different. And you like that just the trust you put in them is like very cool and inspiring to me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different for these like shorter. Obviously what you did was not short, but I'm saying like on that like, 200, 300 mile FKTs, I think it's a lot different because you can plan everything and
Right.
pretty much, I mean, FKTs go awry in some way, but you can sort of stay somewhat close to your plan. But with these FKTs, like the Appalachian Trail that go on for 6 weeks, it's it's hard to plan everything. I did plan the first 10 days of
Hmm.
the FKT, and even then we had a little deviation from there. But after that, I didn't know how I was gonna feel. I didn't know like um what I'd be able to do after that point because I've never gone beyond a month. And at
Sure.
that, during the MST, that was a little slower than what I was doing at this point. So I just didn't know what that was going to look like. So I really understood that I needed a crew that could make those decisions. And I know so many incredible people, and Rascal is just one of those people who just is really good with trail math, who, I mean, she is very competitive as well. You
Hmm.
need somebody who's competitive and also is a good friend. But with that, there's like a little bit of like, I guess duality would be the right word. Like she's a friend, but she's also gonna push me and she's gonna let that friend side of her shut down so she can just push me to an absolute
Hmm.
limit because she knows that's gonna fill both of us with joy if we can get that record. We're not out there to just have a good time. We're out there to push the limits, and she knows that, and she's able to turn off that friend side of
Hmm.
her and push me and listen to me cry for hours and not let that bother her and just go for this record.
Man. uh Made me think of something. Okay, actually, I'm gonna ask the more serious one first, and then we can make fun of people who live on social media. But so the first
Yeah.
question was, I've talked to like multiple people who have done these big multi-day things, like Nick Fowler, Christian Morgan, um, like Liz, obviously. And one thing that I've always sort of wondered is, or not wondered, but like different things people deal with is deciding where to stop at night. And so like Christian talks a lot about like Christian is very it seems like he's mostly married to the road crossings. It's like he likes to stop at the car, and that can sometimes create difficult logistical situations because like maybe if you want to stop at a road, you have to decide between a 50-mile day and a 63-mile day, and it's like, oh, I what am I going to do? Uh what did you always stop at the car? Were you more of the mindset of splitting the days evenly to, get the mileage and then I'll just like sleep wherever? Or like how did you decide how to split the days up sort of from a logistics perspective?
Yeah, I knew just personally from my own experience that we would have to do half camping, half like van
Mm.
nights. And I knew I slept really well in the tent. So
Hmm.
that was ever like a question, like, where am I going to sleep the best? I almost slept better in the tent most of the times. than I did in the van
Sure.
at road crossings. But I knew that we would have to do that because a couple reasons, like from my own experience, but also Carl Meltzer, he's one of my mentors, and he was just like, to get this record, you need to be able to sleep in a tent part of the time. And then I
Hmm.
also listened to Carl Sabe as well, where he was talking about, his PCT experience, about how they would, the first one where they would camp a lot. Um, and then he also talked about having consistent mileage. So I felt more married to that idea of like doing more consistent miles instead of like what Christian Morgan, obviously that works for him in some way. But I don't feel like that works for me. But like what he did was, like you said, like, you'd have to do a 60 or a 50, 40 something mile day.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, I wanted to stay consistent to that 50 odd, wherever we're sitting, wanted to stay consistent to that mileage. And I was lucky enough, I'm so thankful to have Rascal and JP. They would bring up my camping gear, set it up, and we'd have dinner and they put me to bed, take care of my feet and put me to bed. So I am really thankful for them. But I knew I would have to do like half camping and half van stays. Um, and I almost preferred the camping, honestly. It's just like it's cooler, it's like physically cooler, like the
Sure.
temperature. The van gets really hot sometimes. We had a lot of bodies in there as well. Um, but yeah, yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay, and then the less important one I wanted to ask about was you mentioned we're not necessarily out here to have the best time. We're out here to set a record and like also have fun along the way, but the record is sort of the main goal. How how have you found like I'm not big enough to have haters, but like people love to hate on successful people and have you gotten any like amount of pushback from like I've seen comments on like a random stupid Facebook post about like, oh, this isn't what the Appalachian Trail's for. She didn't even smell the rose. She's probably never through hiked a trail in 5 months before and enjoyed it. And so, like, I guess I feel like my personality, that stuff would bother me, even though it shouldn't, because I know it's just like online garbage. But like, how how have you been able to respond to like the negative stuff? Does it bother you? Are you able to ignore it really well? Like how does it stick with you?
Yeah, the first weekish, I was kind of on comment sections or like on Facebook, where a lot of the debauchery tended to happen. But like on Facebook or Instagram or like some YouTube videos, I'd like look at some comments and be like, "Oh, that really bothers me." And I never I responded to a couple, just a couple, but mostly my crew was responding to a lot of them.
Hmm.
After that first week, I just like kind of, that's just gonna happen. And I looked at it in a different way because after that first week, like, oh, it was bothering me. Like people are saying, like, oh, you didn't enjoy it. Like, oh, she probably cheated.
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw some of that. I was like,
like, there's no way a woman holds this record. There's no way. Like, oh my
like
God.
her cadence data through the whites. So like I personally know all of the pacers that brought her through the whites, you dumb idiots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that too. I had a pacer literally with me. You could ask any of these people.
Well,
I
the
had
other
it.
thing was like, it always mind boggles me when people accuse people of cheating when they have a live tracker and it's a supported effort. Like, how terrifying, if you were cheating, how terrifying would it be to think that like someone could show up at any point and just blow your cover? Like,
Yeah, like a lot of the times people did just randomly show up, and not
right.
saying Iceman was trying to like get me or anything, but I knew where my next crew stop was. But Iceman would just show up. Love Iceman, by the way, but he would show up to see if I need anything else. Like Iceman could have definitely, if I was cheating, he could have definitely blown my cover because he was all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. And I think that bothered me at first, but then I started thinking how how incredible this FKT had to be for people to think you're cheating.
Exactly.
There's no
Yeah. It's
way.
a
Like I was like,
compliment.
I am actually, I love this. Thank you. Like,
You've
thank you for thinking this is such an incredible thing that I did.
you've entered the realm of superhuman. People are like,
Yeah.
"Ah, that's impossible. A woman couldn't possibly do that."
Well, here we are. And so I stopped looking into, after the first week, I stopped looking at those comments. And they're always the same ones, like I just mentioned, like, oh, did you stop and did you enjoy the trail? And it's so funny. Like we say this all the time. Like people, it's funny, people who are the ones saying like hike your own hike are also the ones that are saying you didn't do it correctly. You
Hmm.
hiked really fast or you ran it really fast. I'm like, well, like as you know too, FKTs are not like we're not going, we're not running 8 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We're we're running probably at a 2.5 to like 3.5 mile per hour pace. It's not incredibly fast. And, you walk up. I know I walked up the uphills, I hiked the uphills, and I ran very slowly the downhills and the flats. I still saw a lot. And I was also able to see the trail at night. And obviously, I can't see the
Mm.
views, but I see the trail at night. So I was able to see like armadillos in the south. I was able to see
So
a
cool.
deer. I saw a bobcat. I saw a bobcat at night. Like, I saw a bobcat. Not a lot of thru hikers are able to see bobcats because, they're roaming around at night or they're just so elusive. But I
Sure.
saw one, and that's so cool. All the bugs at night too. Goodness gracious. I mean, who knew how many bugs there were on the AT? I saw a black widow at night as well. I
Oh,
was
God.
laying down for a nap and I like my headlamp's still on and I look, in the dirt, I look to this trail and I see a black widow. I'm like, okay, not here. Absolutely not.
That's horrible.
Like if I was through hiking or if I was going slow, I probably wouldn't have been able to take a dirt nap and see a black widow or see that bobcat.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. The comments, they're very creative. People are very fun and creative. I got this cool one on YouTube because I have this YouTube series where I'm going through like daily vlogs of the FKT. And
Hmm.
somebody commented is like, that's an incredible thing you did, but why didn't you just drive the trail? The point of the trail is to enjoy the ride. And you went so fast. I'm like, wait, what? It's like, wait, drive the trail? Do you think this is a Blue Ridge Parkway?
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense to me. I feel like my Subaru Forester would do great on in the Mahoosic Notch. It'd be really good. That's
Oh, quite the ad for Subaru.
yeah, true. This is a paid sponsorship by Subaru. We're gonna take a quick ad break. Um, okay, so another you alluded to it a little bit with these wonderful YouTube comments, but the for people who know the ultra distance scene, like they're sort of this is sort of known to people who know the sport as like as the distances get longer, the at whatever gap there is between male and female seems to close, and so what do you think that is? Like, is it a mentality? Is there something with mentality of females that you guys can push harder through more pain? Is there something with like one thing that always popped into my mind was like on the AT, the guys at the end of the AT all look like skeletons, and generally like females don't. And so I wonder if there's some way that over long periods of high stress that females like hold on to energy stores better. I just like wonder what your thoughts are about like why that gap closes and like what what advantages like why should more females be going for these records?
Yeah, I think a big goal of mine was to encourage more women and girls to go for like that tough goal. But more specifically go for big FKTs like any FKT, but big FKTs like the Appalachian Trail or the PCT, because I truly believe women can hold this FKT for, yeah, I think men are great, but I think women are a little better with these long FKTs. Like you mentioned, I'm no scientist. I say this all the time, do your own research, but women hold on to fat stores, I believe, a little better. I am so glad you said that. I felt the same exact way after my through hike on the AT, where, the women looked great. We looked muscular and like, fit. And the men just, disintegrated. The only like big part of their body was their like beard that was enveloping their face. Everything else was just like melted, a melted body.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm so glad you shared that sentiment, but I think women can hold on to fat stores a little better. I think there is, and it's so personal. It's so personal, so it's hard to say. There
Sure.
is a mentality thing there. I think, like, with women, with childbearing and then childbirth, we have to be able to go beyond like this like pain that's like unnatural,
Hmm.
natural for women, but like unnatural to your everyday. We have to be able to birth children, and I've never birthed a child, but I hear it's really painful. So there's something with mentality there. Um, I think there's this fun statistic. Somebody like messaged me on Instagram if you know where it's from, but I think I read somewhere that more women who sign up for ultras, more women finish ultras than men. And I don't know where I read that. Like it's just like the ratio there.
Like by percentage.
Yeah, yeah, women are
Interesting.
more likely to finish an ultra compared to a man. And it's not about, I've said this many times, it's not about beating men. And I didn't want to, I don't want women to beat men, but I just know that there is some untapped potential there,
Totally.
women, that we haven't fully discovered yet. I think
Hmm.
men are at this point where, they're really discovering their limits, and it's so fun to see these course records going down for men and also for women, obviously for women,
For
but
sure.
we are really tapping into that, and it's going to be really fun in the next couple years, like 10 years, to see what we can do. There's so many women uh role models I've been lucky to have, and I'm just really lucky to have these women who I've looked up to, who have given me confidence to go for these big things and go for these overall FKTs. If it wasn't for Jen and for Anish, I don't know if I would have had that full confidence to go for the overall FKT. But I knew it was possible because a woman has done it before. And I think it's so important to have representation there. And I really hope that this FKT has shown women, it is possible to get these overall FKTs and to discover our limits or discover our potential really as women. It's just so cool to like be on the cusp of that and see what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, so I have a lot of questions from the viewers that we'll try to rifle through. Before I get to that, one more question that I was wondering about. Like, obviously, you were a successful ultra runner before this, but your public profile has exploded since the Appalachian Trail ended. How has that transition been for you to, go from an ultra runner who's like obviously very good, few thousand Instagram followers and like known in the ultra scene, but now there's people like outside of the ultra scene who know who you are and like your name is being thrown around kitchens in America. Like how does that feel? Like how has that transition been?
Yeah, I've been pretty isolated since the FKT just because it's um it's it was such a personal, like, very, we had like this little crew to then go and spend time outside of that little crew is overwhelming for me. So I'm right now in the Colorado mountains. I am deep in the mountains all by myself, which is really nice. So I haven't really been outside, like in our typical environments where I'm like feeling that attention. So it's mostly been online. And like you said, on Instagram, I have, gained a lot of followers, and that is really exciting. Um, I'm trying I'm trying to, I'm using this platform to be able to spread like attention to things like Girls in the Run, but more specifically now, recovery efforts in Western Carolina
Hmm.
and parts of Virginia and Tennessee and Florida, like trying to spread awareness for that. So I'm really thankful that I have this platform to be able to do that. But if I'm to be a little selfish, it is like overwhelming and a little anxiety inducing, and kind of makes me want to isolate a little more. So, um, and kind of just want to be back on the trail. I miss it.
Hmm.
I look at videos every day and it's like it's a bad trap because I get really, it's that post-trail depression that you get. Um, so it's just, with the amount of attention there is on social media and just with that post-trail depression, it's just been a little difficult. But I am overall thankful for the opportunity to be able to like spread these messages and talk about things beyond myself. Because like I've mentioned 100 times, it wasn't me that did this FKT, it was my crew.
Hmm.
But yeah, it has translated into a lot of uh, fun. My relatives reach out to me and like random friends reach out to me and they're like, oh, my brother, like one of my friends I worked with at REI, like messaged me. She's like, my brother just sent me an article. It's like, look at this person who just did the ATFKT. She's like, I worked with her at REI. So it's fun to get those messages from friends and family. It's like, oh, this is so fun. Um, a little overwhelming though.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So got a lot of questions from the viewers. Try to rifle through them.
I love that post you put up, by the way.
Yeah. You just got to make sure that people know that you didn't stop and smell the roses and you're not even really a real through hiker, you know? That's
Not really. I actually don't like trails. I just wanted to set the FKT,
yeah,
and
that just makes sense to me. That's yeah.
on my I actually hate trails so much.
Yeah. That's That's fair. I did you what I like to do is just throw my, whenever I eat a bar or something, I just throw it on the ground.
I mean, that's how you say ultralight is by
Exactly.
littering. They say leave no trace, but I think that's a conspiracy. They don't know
That's
what they're
right.
talking.
And there's not a lot of switchbacks in New England, but when I find them, I cut them as hard as I possibly can, right?
Yeah, yeah. What was they reforestation? Whatever. I
No,
don't.
that's a big hoax.
Yeah.
Okay, that was all joke. Please don't chop that out of context. So, uh, first question, how many pairs of shoes did you go through?
Oh yeah. I think like around five-ish. I think five, around
Five.
five.
Okay. All.
Like we had a lot of shoes that I
Mhm.
switched throughout, but like four or five that were just completely decimated by the end.
And were you strictly in the Olympus?
Yeah, I found that the Olympus was my favorite. I switched into that halfway through and just loved it. I was in
Okay.
the Lone Peak a little bit and Mont Blanc a very little bit as well.
Gotcha.
Then once I got on the Olympus, it was over. I was in love.
Yeah. That's super fair. I also pretty much exclusively rock the Olympus at this point, and I like it's so good.
So good.
Okay. Related. You don't actually have to answer this. I just thought it was funny. Hopefully, Ultra gave her a huge bonus. Uh,
Yeah, they're
so.
great. I love them.
Did you ever seriously think about DNFing, and how did you deal with those thoughts?
No, not once. Not once. And the reason that is, like, a lot of times in the MST, when I first started these endurance effort things in 2020, I wanted to quit every single day. But since then, it's been like a stepping, ladder up to like where I am now mentality wise. So I've had a lot of mentors that, set up my expectations for the Appalachian Trail and for this multi-week effort. So they properly set my expectations, and I properly also did the work to set up my expectations as well. But I also like have this like not no quitting mentality. If my body is generally okay, like obviously it's not going to be okay,
Sure.
but if I'm still able to move, like I'm going to keep going. And you're
Mhm.
going to keep going until your body just really says like I mean that's like limping down the trail. You can't like move. Like that is when it's like okay, maybe we'll quit then. But I
Sure.
never had a moment where I wanted to quit, maybe go slower for the day and go for less miles, but I never wanted to quit.
Cool. That's very impressive. There were parts of the long trail where I really wanted to quit.
Yeah.
But um okay. From one of our female listeners, maybe TMI, but did they time the attempt around menstrual cycle?
I did not. I did get my period about, I think it was like 10, 10 to 12 days into the FKT and it kind of went away really quickly. And then I was supposed to get it again, but I I missed it. Like it just didn't come. And that's concerning for women athletes
Hmm.
that part of that like triad. And I was concerned with the fact that I didn't get my period, but it did come back, luckily. Um, but I didn't time it, no. Usually when I'm doing these types of endurance records or efforts, it kind of like disappears, which I'm very thankful for. And I don't get a lot
Sure.
of um like a lot of symptoms of like cramps or anything.
Okay.
Moving, which I'm thankful for. When I'm moving my body, the like cramps and headaches or like feeling emotional doesn't quite, it's not as prevalent. If I was like, I just got my period and I've been relaxing for the last 3 weeks, it can be hard.
Sure. Yeah. And so I read this question to my girlfriend and I was confused by it in the sense of like it's a like a 40-day record. How could you avoid going through at least one menstrual cycle? That was my question. Is that is that a dumb question? Like what could this person have been getting at in terms of like if you were gonna time it in like the optimal way, how would you say to time it, or do you think it just doesn't matter?
For me, it doesn't matter. But I think for some other women, I mean, it's so personal that it does matter because some women have very, very heavy flows or have
Hmm.
very intense, like, um, you know, menstrual, like symptoms of, that sounds so weird to say symptoms. Um, but mine honestly isn't that bad. So for me,
Sure.
it wasn't important.
Okay.
It's more important for me to time it. I was timing it based on weather. I knew that would
Yeah.
probably be more of a it would be more of a factor, especially in Maine, than, my period would.
And so what this isn't one of their questions, but it's one of my questions uh in terms of a June, like starting around when you have the most sunlight versus starting later in the summer when the temps might be a little cooler or the weather might be slightly less variable. Like, do you think do you think late summer is the right way to go? Why did you decide to go late summer and like what do you think sort of the benefits are of an early summer attempt versus a late summer attempt?
Yeah, I obviously wanted to. I think it's known that going, July, June, July is pretty optimal because of the sunlight. And that's why I wanted to go in June, July, but I had hard rock, so I had to push
Mm,
it back a lot. But I found like August to be a great season. It did get hot for a handful of those days, like really, really hot. And towards the end of the FKT, the sunlight, like I did not have as much sunlight. Like in the mornings, like it took a while for the sun to actually come up, and at night, like it got dark pretty quickly. I was starting to notice how much sunlight I was getting. Um, but it honestly wasn't, it was pretty nice. The temperatures were really nice and wasn't a lot of rain. I'm not sure about how much rain June, July gets.
sure.
Is it this year that the Nobo thru hikers got a lot of rain? Was that this year?
I think it was last year. I think this
Last year.
year was comparatively dry,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, how many miles? This is from a from Rowan, one of my long trail pacers. How many miles did Rascal do between pacing and camp setup and breakdown?
Oh yeah, she's I didn't track it. She's one of those.
Ah, classic.
Oh, I
Just
don't
better than
track.
us.
Yeah, oh yeah. I just enjoy the miles. I'm just yeah, I love messing with her on that, but oh man, I have no clue. So I think JP, who came in at New York and he stayed the entire time, I think he got 400 to 500 miles. I would say that Rascal probably got the same amount of miles as he did. He was able to spend longer. When he finally came in, he was able to spend a lot more time with me than Rascal was. She had a lot of other duties. His only duty was to pace.
Sure.
Um, so I would say like through the entire trail, she probably got close to like 400 miles.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, nutrition and fueling, we already talked about that. Um, Which state was the hardest?
Definitely Virginia. Virginia, those rocks and boulders that you have to climb up and oh my gosh. No, I love Virginia. Virginia is so cruisy. I mean, we've already talked about this, but definitely like New Hampshire, southern Vermont or southern Maine was really, really hard. New Hampshire, probably like top, top hardest state.
So this is a sort of zeroing in. There was another question that I haven't heard this story before, but someone submitted a question about talk about how Spencer got her lost in the whites, uh, and then they added it's his own backyard. So I guess Spencer fucked up.
Yeah, who said that?
Um, Chipalik. I know this. I know her name uh if I saw it. Hold on. Um, Aaron Pollock.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, that was it's actually a video of me taking the wrong turn. Like they were behind. It was Jimmy Rips and Spencer
Oh,
and
classic Jimmy Rips.
yeah, and they spend a lot of time out there and they also help a lot of like people with their FKTs out there. Um but I was in front. So it's on me, honestly. It's on me. I have a video. It's actually on my Instagram of me taking the wrong turn to go forget which mountain it was, but we just like got right off trail. We were all just like having a great time and we got about a half a mile before Jimmy Rips was like, wait a second, we're not on we're not on the trail. So I had to turn around. And I was like, I was okay. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, I can't get upset about it. It's just how it is. Like, obviously a half a mile or like a mile in the whites, like an extra mile is not optimal, but
Sure.
can't really getting upset about it's not going to like improve the situation. All you need to do is get back on trail. And after that, like it almost encourages me more if I take a wrong turn. I've noticed that if like I'm in an ultra and I take a wrong turn or if I like get off or if I like get injured or something for like if I fall, it almost encourages me to like in those next miles to like go really fast to like catch up with myself where I would be like the ghost of Tara if she had
Yeah,
taken
yeah. Oh,
the
I like
right.
that. It
So
immediately.
I'm almost like, yeah, let's go. And
Yeah.
that's almost how I felt. You can anyone can ask Spencer or Jimmy Rips, but after that section, I just started running over these. I don't know what came over me. I was listening to this music and like with that encouragement that I got from taking that wrong turn, I was just like running really well in the whites. And they're like, oh my gosh, their mind was blown. They're like, oh, no way.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. It like immediately snaps you into underdog mode.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it wasn't their fault, but I can see how a lot of people kind of have given them crap for that. But I was the one that took the wrong turn.
Okay, good to know. Do you remember which area it was?
We had gone up, we just gone up Mount Moriah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I'd make fun of them for that. That's a hard place to fuck up, but they let you do it. Okay.
They're just such fun guys though. We had a great time. Iconic.
Yeah, very iconic. Um, okay. Let's see. We talked about the whites a bit. Okay, this person, I won't say their name, but their questions, maybe this wasn't the intent, but their questions came off to me as a little bit more skeptical. So I'll just put
Yeah,
them out there.
love
Um,
those.
their first question was like, what's the record verification process like, slash, how much do they check the validity? And second question was opinion on FKT drug testing slash need for it on an effort like this. So question
Uh,
is, were you getting EPO injections and did you cheat?
yeah, absolutely. Kidding. Just kidding. Nobody cut that. So send me their name outside of this. DM me their name so I can bully them. Um, but verification process. I don't know what the verification process is, but
Oh, I can.
you you submit like your Strava, and I had two forms of tracking. So I had my Garmin tracker and then I had Strava. So they compare the two. They compare like the trail, any detours. They compare every bit of trail to make sure you've done every. every mile. And they can also reach out to pacers or crew. And if there is a need for like getting more validity there, they can reach out to them. Um, and then I don't know if you can add more color to that, but as far as drug testing goes, I don't think there's like a lot of money in FKTs, so I don't think that's like it, in the spirit of FKTs, obviously like not everyone's going to have the same viewpoint, but in the spirit, people who tend to do FKTs aren't doing it to, in my opinion, in my experience, aren't doing it this for like a payday or for popularity. You tend to get people out there who are there for the experience and there to like test limits. There's also not a lot of, like I said, there's not a lot of money in FKTs. It's not like, I'm gonna get this huge payday. Obviously, I got a lot of like people who followed me on Instagram, but that's a lot of work to do to just
Mhm.
get a lot of followers on Instagram. So it doesn't seem quite worth it. Um, to do
Yeah.
that, um, to do an FKT to that degree. And so like cheating in an FKT or like EPO injections, which I'm not very familiar with, luckily, it seems like overkill in a sport that doesn't see a lot of um does that make sense? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I
So
don't know if you could add more color to this conversation because you also do a lot of FKTs.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of like not adding on, but just yeah, adding color, I guess, to what you said. I always like to joke with people that I've found the world's hardest way to get 3,000 Instagram followers. It's like there's no point in like perhaps FKT will get to the point at some point where stuff like drug testing will be necessary, but we're not there yet. We're not close to there yet. There's no money in this sport. I have lost a significant amount of money doing FKTs.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I had to save up my money. I had to work at REI in the winter and like save up a lot of money to then pay for everything involved with this FKT. I spent more money on this FKT than, I mean, yeah, it doesn't
yeah.
pay anything.
The other thing, like we talked about a little bit earlier, as far as the validity piece goes, again, the idea that for a very public record like this, that you're going to go 2,000 miles, you're going to cheat along the way, and like random locals who don't know Tara are going to come out at random times because she's live tracked the entire time, and no one's going to discover that she's cheating. Like, uh, I just don't believe it. So that's my answer to that is like on a very public effort, it would be more terrifying to cheat than it would be to actually go for the record. And in terms of drug testing, like yes, FKT is not uh FKT doesn't have that infrastructure in place. They're like a bare bones crew as it is, and they're trying their best, but there's just not enough incentive. I like the big ultras. I don't think there's a ton of cheating in big ultras. I'm sure there's some, but like if you're gonna cheat in the ultra scene, like that's where you're gonna do it. Like there's more money there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've, again, I am very honored by this person and their
Maybe
thought.
these were just genuine curious questions
Yeah,
and
no, it's great questions. It's great things to bring up, but like we've mentioned, FKTs are just kind of they're not at that point to
mhm.
where there's a lot of I don't think we have a lot of cheaters. Maybe there's some, I don't know, but I think it's really hard to cheat in an FKT.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
haven't thought about it a lot, but I I would imagine it's pretty difficult to cheat in an FKT.
yeah, and I think like well, one, we have seen recently FKT um like enforce their rules on big name FKTs like with the whole I'm forgetting the name of the peak in Wyoming.
Yes, yeah, Grand. It was the
Grand
Teton.
Teton, yeah. Grand
Yeah,
Teton
the
FKT like
insane
they
drama.
right and they investigated a Strava track and saw that he cut a switchback. And also like that's another situation where okay, I don't think he was really cheating. Like I don't know. I don't believe that uh I don't believe that he thought that that was against the rules, right? And so like it's a little bit of a shitty situation because like I don't think he thought it was against the rules because people in the past had done it, but at the same time I understand why FKT is doing what they're doing in terms of setting a standard that follows federal law.
Yeah.
But that is to say, like FKT does moderate and police this stuff. They're not just approving everything.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking into these. I had my the editor, the verification person who was set up with my FKT, they reached out and they asked about a certain section. My watch died in the Kinsman's. And
Mm,
so luckily I had my second tracker. So anyone going for FKTs definitely have two trackers, like your watch and maybe a Garmin. So I was able to send that, but I was also able to have my Pacer Maya. She sent over her tracking information as well. Um, so they are looking into it. Like, I mean, to find like, I think it died like, what was it, 5 miles? So it's a significant step. But like, they had to go in there and check, go through the trail and check that like section
sure.
and see like what was going on there. So, I mean, yeah, they are like looking into this. Also, all of that information, all the tracking information is public. So anyone who has any doubts can go in there and check for
Check
themselves.
it out.
Yeah, look
It's
at it.
there.
I encourage you to.
Yeah. I remember there's some dumb website. I don't know if it's like I Run Far or something like that. Anyway, it was one of those like running forum websites and like literally like 12 hours after you posted, there were like messages on there being like she hasn't uploaded the tracks from the last 3 days. I'm like, dude, she's literally like unconscious in the Georgia woods right now. Like give her some time. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and also like for some reason, I literally had the people at Koros in here trying to figure it out with me, but the last I think it was the last 10 days were not uploading. So you know how I don't know
Mm,
if you have a Koros, but it uploads the Koros app and then it instantly goes to Strava.
mhm.
Well, for some reason it was going to Koros, but then it wasn't going to Strava. And so
Interesting.
I contacted the people at Koros and they were trying to help me figure it out. And we went back and forth and they were like, okay, you have to manually upload these. So you have to like upload it via, like, you have to upload the GPX files manually to Strava. I don't know what I did, but I did something like that. But yeah, so, I was, like you said, I was unconscious, but I was also like trying to figure out this technical issue. I'm good in the woods, but when it comes to technical stuff, like that is beyond me.
Yeah. I think what I've found is that it's the person who's done like a 50K one time who doesn't like they know just enough to be stupid. That's it's just I don't know. Like no one who's actually done one of these things was ever questioning you for a second.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
it's funny. Yeah, you see this like tier, like you said, like somebody's done like a 50K or whatever. And 50Ks are awesome. Like I'm not
oh,
saying
absolutely. I'm not ripping
well,
anyone who's like that. All I'm saying, I was saying like everyone that I know who is was like hardcore questioning it fell into the category of I know a little, but I don't know enough. I'm not
yeah,
saying all
exactly.
50K runners are like that, just to clarify.
Yeah. There was Good Morning America posted something on their like media pages, Facebook and like Instagram. And that is, like I mentioned on the Facebook debauchery, that is where people are like, not, no, absolutely not, will not believe it. It's like, well,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
there's a lot more to it than than meets the eye.
Totally. This is from one of my high school classmates.
Oh,
The question
nice.
is, and he's setting you up to destroy me here. Does she think she's capable of taking down the long trail record that I just set? So you don't necessarily have to answer that because I think at this point you should have like I'm sure you do have the confidence that you could compete with basically any record. But my my question, like when I read this was, is the long trail one that interests you?
Yes, it is. It's interested me since like last year around. I have so many friends in Vermont. I never lived in Vermont, but I have now so many buds in Vermont, just like from Arlie and from Rascal, knowing them. I've
Hmm.
just made so many friends. And Vermont was such a fun section on trail because I had so many people coming out, like Alyssa Godesky and her husband. Scott came out, Maya came out. I mean, they came out in the whites, but I had so many people come out and it was so much fun. So I have thought about the long trail one because I know so many people would be so much fun to like be out there with friends, but also like the long trail is just like so iconic. It's like so I've have so many buds have done it and it just seems like such a beautiful, difficult trail. It's definitely something that I'm drawn to. The difficulty of the long trail is something really drawn to. Um, I don't know if I could compete with your FKT because it is very stout and very difficult, but I definitely want to go out there and see what I can do.
Yeah, I think you should. I think that'd be sweet. Uh,
Give me all your spreadsheets and I'll give you all my ink sheets. We'll switch.
perfect. I'll actually might take you up on that. Um, okay, few more questions. Do 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 do. Da, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba. Oh, okay, Mead Binhammer, what a guy. He's another awesome Vermont fellow.
Yeah.
What was the lowest low you experienced on the trail and what got you through it? And I'm guessing this has something to do with like the Franconia Ridge-ish area.
Yeah. Um, the lowest low, I've mentioned this a couple times, but it changes every day. But recently, for like last week, I've been just thinking a lot about the whites, specifically like that day, Franconia Notch, and the Kinsmans. But like this, that was the hardest day, but this specifically like hardest moment was in the Kinsmans with Maya. She was pacing me, but I had just finished up Franconia Notch, Lafayette, with Scott. We came down and were with my crew before I went off into the Kinsmans.
Mhm.
And I just could not wrap my head around doing like another, whatever that section was, however many miles it was. And in the whites, it's not like you're going 3 miles per hour. You are moving at a 2.5 mile per hour pace. So it takes so long. I could not wrap my head around going the amount of miles I had to do. I forget what it was. But like I was going with Maya. This is my first time meeting Maya. I've heard all about her from Rascal and from Arlie and from Scott and how amazing she is. And she is amazing. She got me through that section, but I'm just meeting her. And for the first like 3, 4 miles, I am crying the entire time. And she's so nice. She's like, I'm crying. I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, I understand. She's carrying all of my things, and I'm just walking and crying. And we finally get to really after, I forget that one hut, after you pass that one hut, and then it gets like, you start like hiking up
The
into
yeah, the Lonesome Lake Hut.
Lonesome Lake. After you pass Lonesome Lake, like the crying stopped and I just like got to business, but it was so difficult. It started raining shortly after that. I don't know if Maya was cold, but I had every single layer on. She had like her rain jacket on, so she's just such a freaking trooper. Um, but like I had every layer on and I was so cold. I was so tired. The whites are just they just take it out of you. And we get to this section, and I'm looking at my phone to look at like how far we have on far out and these mud bridges that aren't really mud bridges. So thankful for any maintenance crew out there who's maintaining the trail, but some of these mud bridges just leave more to be desired, and you step on one in the mud. So this is my fault. I'm looking at my phone simultaneously stepping onto a mud bridge, this big mud pile, and I'm just like in my phone and I trip and I fall and I'm instantly my phone is in the mud. My hands or knees and are in the mud. Mud splashes up on my face. It's raining. It's cold. Maya's like, "Hey, it's okay, but you should get out of the mud and the water because it's really cold, and I don't want you to get hypothermic." And after that point, I just like it's getting dark, and I'm just like disassociating, and I'm like, just freaking move. Like, let's get this over with. Um, so I'd say that was the toughest moment,
That's
toughest day.
that's very interesting. I mean, I know this was the section beforehand, but one thing that that Scott and the others from Vermont always uh, told me, which I don't know if this was a subtle shot at me for not being this way, but they said like no matter how things got, you were just brought positive energy, and I thought that was like very, yeah, and like the fact that that was your lowest point and they were still saying that to me, like maybe that was just them saying like, Will, you need to be more positive. But it was also just like struck me as like very very impressive that you were able to keep that mindset.
I think that was because of the Pacers. Like Maya and Scott are notoriously like two of the most positive, fun
They're
people
so good.
in the Northeast. So I think that was probably them and not so much me.
Okay, couple more and then we'll start to wrap it up here. So someone wants to know your top three favorite pieces of gear.
Hmm. Okay, definitely Ultra Olympuses,
Hell yeah.
Boros Vertex, and a Be-Free filter.
Dude, the bee frees are beautiful. They
Yeah,
especially when the flow rate is good, they're it's drinking from that like a hose.
yeah, exactly. I don't know why I didn't think about this before and why I wasn't like taking tips from anyone else. But during the FKT, I realized like, oh, I can screw this onto one of my bottles and drink from it. I don't
Wait,
know.
so
Really, but somewhere in Maine, I was like, oh, I don't need to fill up my bottles. I can just have two filters.
did you have like what bottles did you have that fit the bee free filter on them? Because it's a larger mouth, right?
Yeah, it was. So I had the Ultra Spire. They have like a the what is it? How big is it? Like 30 something millimeters or whatever.
I
But
don't
anyway,
know.
ones that can hook on to the Be Free. So it's Ultra Spire. So they're 500 milliliter ones, and then I also at times use their 300 milliliter ones.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
Cool. That's that's very I've always used the smart water bottles, but like especially I use a lot of liquid nutrition and it's hard to like I have to bring a funnel with me because the mouth isn't big enough. I have to like get the powder in there. Anyway, that I might look into that because the having the wider mouth bottle would be nice even without the filter, but then you can also use the filter on it. That's perfect.
Uh,
Um okay. Last I guess series of questions. Okay. Getting enough calories always is a concern. Was there any food that was easy to consume? I suspect protein shakes. Okay, we already talked about that. Um, what are your inner voice mantras when things get tough?
Ha 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 ha. That's one of
So,
them. It kind of switches, but like nobody ever said this was going to be easy.
mm, that's a good one.
Yeah, nobody said this was going to be easy. And when it's hard, it's like, yeah, it was, you were promised it was going to be hard. And anyone who like goes for this, like, not everyone's going to go for this FKT because it's not easy. It's going to be hard. So
Right.
that was a big one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, cool.
And
Uh,
also there was one, it was oh, what was it? I told it to one of my pacers and he kept repeating it to me when things got really difficult.
um,
I forget what it was, but there was like this thought in my head that like I am in it. I am in it. I am doing it. Like when you realize I am here and I'm doing something that's so big and I'm proving it to myself and I'm proving it to other people. I encourage myself that way because it was like, you're doing it. I would just say, like, you're doing it. You're doing the thing.
that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like mine are generally more, I guess, maybe fact based isn't the right thing, but it's like my mantras are always more like get to the next checkpoint. It's like it's always sort of centering myself on like trying to not think about the whole because the whole like overwhelms me and just
Yeah.
trying to be like get to the next road, get to the next mountain, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that was something Rascal did a lot was like chump change. That's her saying. And so
sure.
chump change is like, getting the FKT is one in like a bunch of little
Hmm.
sections. It's not one, you're not thinking about the entire FKT. You have to piece together good days, one after the other. So it's all about chump change. And I just remember what that other one was, that my pacer repeated to me, but it was like winning is a conscious decision. So like you have to be conscious and you have to be working at it. You
Sure.
can't just like be chilling.
I like that. That's a good saying.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last one we'll do, I think, is I'll let you go wherever you want with this, but sort of just, you talked about this a little bit with raising money for it, but feelings and thoughts in regards to the trail post Milton. Um, and yeah, you can go whichever direction you want with that. I know I'm sort of isolated from it up here, and like my schedule's been busy and all that, but I know you're very connected to the South and Virginia, and what, yeah, what I guess what are your perspectives on the trail post the big hurricane, and how do
Yeah.
we move forward as a trail community?
Yeah, Hurricane Helene really decimated
Oh,
the
was it
south.
Helene?
Yeah, Milton was the recent one. I
That
don't
was the
think,
Florida one.
yeah,
Okay,
Hurricane really decimated that area. And yeah, I'm very connected to the southern half of the Appalachian Trail. And my parents live in Boone, so they have been updating me because they got a lot. I mean, they're literally dealing with, what's going on. And because Boone got pretty wrecked. And I lived in Hot Springs for a summer, and just the trail goes through these trail towns like Irwin and Damascus, and to see these videos of the trail and just like those towns and the areas that I frequent throughout, the last 10, 15 years of my life, it's just so sad. As far as like the politics involved with like the Appalachian Trail, I don't think I don't have a lot of strong opinions on this, but I think like we should focus more on the communities at the moment. There are a
Mhm.
lot of people are like worried about like, oh, is the trail going to like be hikeable? And I think the trail will be okay. I think there's a lot of maintaining clubs that will be out there and try to get it back to 100%. There's a lot of down trees and a lot of damage from the flooding and landslides. And I think there's these incredible maintaining clubs that will get it back there. But I think the focus right now should be on those communities that have been affected. Because Damascus, Asheville, Irwin, all of these hot springs, all these towns are just like their main, their main way of making money was definitely during the season. Leaf peeping was
Sure.
huge. And so they were gearing up for a really big season. And so I think, there's that aspect of it, but also like they don't have a lot of these companies and towns, a lot of their businesses have been destroyed and they're repairing. And I think it's important for if you like the Appalachian Trail, if you enjoy it, if you frequent the Appalachian Trail, I think it's important to donate to these community rebuilding organizations like Beloved Asheville, to build those communities back up. And then, we can go back to the trail and revive the trail. And I think like, yeah, people can go out there and, spend their time doing that if that's what they enjoy, obviously. But I think the communities need a little more work right now. People have lost their lives, they've lost their homes, they've lost their businesses, their way of making money. Um, and I think those need to be focused on at the moment. And
Yeah.
as far as like, if you want to hike the Appalachian Trail, like obviously the ATC said like you shouldn't do like however, I think it was like the last 600 miles. That was what they said. Obviously, the ATC doesn't own the trail, but if you want to go ahead and through hike the rest of the trail, fine. But just know like these communities you're probably not going to get a resupply in these communities like Hot Springs and Damascus.
Right.
You're probably going to be on your own. Water sources might be a little weird, and just know all the facts before you do it. Obviously, I'm not encouraging it. Do what you want, but and do your own research, but just know the facts before you
Yeah,
go out there.
definitely. Um, okay. On that happy note, so um, do you feel like there are any? I know you've talked about this effort to death, and I I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I'm guessing we didn't break any particularly new ground here, but it was great for me to get the chance to chat with you, and it's always a pleasure. Was there anything important about your effort that you feel like we missed?
Oh man, I think we covered like pretty much everything. I can't think of anything.
Do you want to give
Um,
another plug to Girls on the Run?
oh yeah, I still have the donation page open for Girls on the Run. I partner with them during the AT, and that's another point with people who are like questioning the validity. Like, yeah, yeah, one, we don't get money from this, but also a lot of good came from it. I was able to raise nearly $47,000 for Girls on the Run, and that money is going directly to them to aid in these programs that help teach young girls about running, about mental, physical, emotional skills that are so important to the development of young girls. And they have these amazing programs. So all that money is going directly to them. And Ultra is matching, I think they're matching up to like 44,000. So we're going to be able to give a good amount of money to Girls on the Run. So it's still open if anyone wants to donate. I'm going to like close it down here in a little bit so I can focus more on, Southern Appalachia. But
Mhm.
yeah, so exciting to have raised that amount of money for Girls on the Run.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll chat at some point in the future. It sounds like we have, uh, I mean, we're in the same space. We've got overlapping interests, so I'm
Oh,
sure we'll
yeah, of
chat quite a
course.
bit.
Yeah.
Um, all
Well,
right.
yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm gonna hit the stop recording button.